Imagine for a moment you're a medical professional. Every single day, you're not just, treating patients. You're immersed in this overwhelming ocean of information. New research breakthroughs published constantly, clinical guidelines evolve practically weekly, and well, each patient brings a unique, really complex stream of data. So how do medical professionals possibly keep up with this deluge of knowledge and ensure they're making the absolute best decisions, especially when every second truly counts in a life or death scenario? That immense challenge is precisely what we're diving into today. Our focus, artificial intelligence, or AI, and its transformative, absolutely critical role in clinical decision support systems, what we often call CDSS, within healthcare. And look, this isn't about minor tweaks to efficiency. This is a fundamental shift in how doctors interact with patient data, how they access and apply medical knowledge, and ultimately how they make those life-saving decisions right at the bedside. Our mission statement for this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to give you a genuine shortcut to understanding the strategic significance of AI and CDSS. We're going to explore the key players in this rapidly evolving landscape, unpack the core technologies that are making all this possible, and then critically weigh the profound benefits against the crucial challenges that lie ahead. By the end of our conversation, you should have a really profound grasp of how AI is truly becoming an indispensable cognitive aid for clinicians. Now, this deep dive is built from a comprehensive review of excerpts from a foundational text. AI enhances clinical decision support systems in healthcare. So you'll be gaining insights directly from expert analysis, distilled and delivered right to you. As we begin, I guess a key question comes to mind. How exactly is AI moving beyond simply providing raw information to truly guiding clinicians through complex decision pathways?
That's precisely the central question, yeah. And understanding it requires us to first grasp what traditional CDSS were designed to do, and maybe more importantly, where they ultimately fell short. Historically, clinical decision support systems have been conceived as essential health information technologies. Their core purpose was, and it still is really, to provide clinicians with timely, filtered, and parent-specific information right at the point of care. You can kind of think of them as an early attempt at an intelligent assistant integrated into the digital workflow.
And when you mention integrated within electronic health records or EHRs, that sounds like a really fundamental design choice. It implies it's not like a standalone app, but something deeply embedded in their daily tasks. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. That integration piece is key. The foundational idea was to seamlessly integrate these systems directly into the electronic health record, which for almost every clinician today is the primary digital interface they use, all day long. The overarching goal of these traditional CDSS was, and still is, to augment clinical decision-making. Essentially, they aim to bridge that ever-widening gap between the vast, constantly expanding body of medical knowledge. I mean, just consider the sheer volume of new research published daily across every single specialty, and the practical, real-time application of that knowledge to an individual patient sitting right there. They had significant aspirations, really, to improve the overall quality of care, enhance diagnostic accuracy, optimize treatment plans, significantly reduce medical errors that can arise from human oversight or just information overload, and promote a consistent adherence to evidence-based clinical guidelines. The promise was about standardizing the best possible care for every patient.
Okay, on paper, that sounds incredibly impactful. Better care, fewer errors, sticking to best practices is a powerful vision, but you specifically referred to first-generation CDSS. So if the aspirations were so high, what was the bottleneck? Where did those earlier systems fall short in, practical application?
Right, and this is where we hit a really critical pain point that truly highlighted the desperate need for something more intelligent, like AI. First-generation CDSS, despite their noble goals, were largely limited by their reliance on, well, rigid, manually coded, rule-based logic. Imagine countless if-then statements. If a patient has condition X and is prescribed drug Y, then alert for potential interaction Z. Well, that sounds logical in isolation, right? This approach, when scaled across the entire complexity of medicine, inevitably generated an enormous volume of alerts. And these alerts were often generic and critically, frequently irrelevant to the specific, nuanced context of an individual patient's case.
So let me get this straight. If I'm a doctor working through a busy clinic day, and I'm constantly getting pop-ups for things that don't quite apply to my patient or maybe just not important at that specific moment, what happens? I can definitely see how that would quickly become not just frustrating, but counterproductive.
You've hit on the core issue precisely. The direct consequence of this high volume of generic or irrelevant alerts is what we term alert fatigue. It's a huge problem. Clinicians just overwhelmed by a ceaseless flood of notifications, sometimes literally hundreds in a single shift, they become desensitized. They start to ignore or automatically dismiss these prompts, often without even fully reading them, precisely because the signal-to-noise ratio is so incredibly low. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf too many times, you know? This phenomenon renders the system less effective, sometimes even actively detrimental, because it just adds to the already immense cognitive burden on clinicians rather than truly alleviating it. It's a silent patient safety crisis in many ways, because potentially important alerts get lost in the noise, leading to missed opportunities or even errors.
Wow, that's a huge problem. If the very tool designed to provide support ends up creating more work, or worse, being routinely ignored, then it's basically failing in its core purpose.
So, okay, this is where AI steps in, presumably. How does AI fundamentally transform this picture and address that critical pain point of a light fatigue and irrelevance?
This is the strategic significance, right? The true game changer that AI brings to clinical decision support. AI enables CDSS to move beyond being just a static, rigid, rule-based tool and genuinely become a dynamic, context-aware, and highly personalized cognitive aid. Instead of relying solely on those predefined if-then rules that just can't account for nuance, AI-powered CDSS can analyze complex, multimodal patient data. Now, when I say multimodal, I mean we're talking about synthesizing everything from conventional lab results, imaging scans like MRIs and CTs, genomic information even, to much less structured data, such as free text physician notes, patient-reported symptoms, and even social determinants of health gleaned from various inputs. It has the capability to understand the nuanced interplay of all these diverse data points. Okay, so when you say multimodal data, you mean it's not just looking at one piece of information in isolation, but it's actually connecting all the dots from these really different sources to form a holistic picture of the patient.
Precisely. It's about synthesizing all that disparate information, often from completely different formats, text, numbers, images, and understanding their relationships. The result is that these systems can deliver highly nuanced, predictive insights that traditional systems simply couldn't dream of. They move far beyond simple warnings to offer truly intelligent guidance. For instance, a traditional system might just flag a potential drug interaction. An AI-powered CDSS, however, might analyze a patient's specific genetic markers, their unique metabolic profile, their history of medication adherence, maybe even their current social circumstances, to predict not just if an adverse drug event is possible, but what the likelihood is for this specific patient. And then it might suggest alternative medications or specific monitoring strategies tailored just for them. This level of contextual understanding and predictive capability is genuinely revolutionary. What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how AI isn't just making existing systems faster. It's fundamentally changing what they can do by understanding the full context of a patient's situation and anticipating future needs.
That distinction, yeah, from static information to dynamic, intelligent guidance, that really highlights the leap we're talking about. So, okay, given this monumental shift, who are the movers and shakers in this rapidly evolving space? It feels a bit like an established city with existing foundations, right? And now new architects are trying to build these innovative skyscrapers right on top of those existing structures. Who are these established players? And who are the new architects making waves?
That analogy actually captures the market landscape really well. The CDSS market is structurally defined, you could say, by the dominance of major electronic health record vendors. These are the companies that own and control the primary digital interface that clinicians use every single day. This creates a powerful ecosystem where innovation comes from two main sources: the incumbent EHR platforms themselves, developing their own AI features, and a dynamic new wave of AI-native companies. But here's the crucial point for these AI-native innovators. They must achieve seamless integration with those existing EHR systems to succeed. Without that deep, frictionless integration into the clinician's established workflow, adoption rates are likely to remain low, no matter how advanced their AI might be. It has to fit in.
Right, that makes sense. Let's talk about those incumbents first then. Who are the biggest names in EHRs that essentially set the stage and provide the infrastructure for all of this development?
Okay, so in the U.S. market, Epic Systems Corporation stands out as the clear market leader. Their integrated CDSS solutions are installed in, I think the number is over 2,200 hospitals and health systems, which represents more than 35% of the entire market. That's huge. Given Epic's robust and deeply integrated EHR platform, their own decision support tools are foundational for a vast number of clinicians. Following closely behind is Oracle Cerner, which holds nearly 25% of the market share. Cerner's platform also serves as a key hub, not just for their native CDSS solutions, but also as a common point for third-party CDSS integrations. A lot of other tools plug into Cerner. Beyond these two giants, other significant players include Meditech, Change Healthcare, which is now part of Optum, and Athena Health. They collectively control a substantial portion of the market and also offer their own integrated CDSS functionalities. These companies are, in essence, the foundational infrastructure providers defining the digital environment where clinical care happens.
So they're the ones who own the main operating system, essentially, for hospitals and clinics. Now, what about those new architects, the AI native companies you mentioned? How are they innovating within this established city? Maybe building new layers or specialized functionalities on top.
Yeah, the AI native companies are particularly interesting because their core focus is really on enhancing the capabilities of those existing EHRs. They often act as intelligent overlays or specialized plugins. Consider WellDate, for example. They offer what they call a smart AI-powered user interface. It functions as an intelligent overlay on top of EHRs from both Oracle Cerner and Epic. Their AI basically organizes and visualizes the most clinically relevant patient data from what is typically a very cluttered and overwhelming EHR interface. So instead of a clinician having to click through dozens of tabs or scroll endlessly to find, say, a key lab result or a particular specialist note from months ago, WellSheet's AI intelligently curates and displays only the most pertinent information for that specific patient at that specific moment. And more than that, WellSheet also serves as a critical conduit for seamlessly integrating external third-party knowledge bases directly into the EHR workflow.
That sounds like a significant improvement for clinicians just in terms of usability, reducing that mental burden of searching. What about other innovators in this space? Any other examples?
Oh, definitely. Another key innovator is AvomD. They provide a platform that actually converts static clinical guidelines and lengthy protocols, which, can often be dozens of pages long and really difficult to follow in real time during an encounter, into interactive actionable tools directly embedded within the EHR workflow. So this means a guideline isn't just a PDF you have to pull up and read. It becomes a dynamic checklist, maybe a decision tree, or a structured order set that guides the clinician step by step. Their solution also includes features like AI-driven clinical summaries, which can automatically distill key patient information, and they're also working on ambient scribing, designed to further streamline documentation. Then there's evidence care. They focus specifically on providing EHR integrated, evidence-based pathways to guide those really high-stakes clinical decisions. They offer tools like admission care, which helps determine the appropriate patient admission status inpatient versus observation, which has huge financial implications, and care gauge for optimizing care utilization based on established protocols. These are critical areas where precise decision support can have a huge impact on both efficiency and patient outcomes and cost.
And you mentioned some even more specialized AI tools that plug into this ecosystem as well. Can you give us a couple of examples that highlight maybe more niche but still crucial applications?
Certainly. There's Cordy, for instance. They offer something called Cordy Assistant, which acts as an AI scribe. But beyond just automating documentation during patient encounters, it can provide guideline-based recommendations to the clinician in real time based on the conversation. For instance, it might prompt a doctor about a specific question to ask based on the patient's presenting symptoms, or perhaps suggest a diagnostic test based on keywords it picks up from the dialogue. Then you have a company like InfoScience with their HCC assistant. HCC stands for Hierarchical Condition Category. This tool analyzes patient data in real time to suggest appropriate HCC codes. Now, these codes are vital for risk adjustment in healthcare. They ensure accurate billing, appropriate resource allocation, and proper financial reimbursement based on the complexity of the patient population being treated. So getting them right is really important financially for health systems. These specialized tools truly demonstrate the breadth and depth of AI's application within the CDS landscape, targeting very specific pain points and workflows.
Okay, so we've got the EHR giants, the big platforms, and these innovative AI companies building specialized layers on top. But who's actually providing the constantly updated medical knowledge? The evidence-based science that feeds these intelligent systems. Where does the core medical content come from?
That's where the knowledge and content providers come in, and their role is definitely evolving dramatically in this age of AI. Wolters Kluwer, through its up-to-date platform, is probably the most globally recognized and highly trusted source of clinical information for millions of clinicians. It's ubiquitous. For years, the traditional workflow involved clinicians consciously stepping out of their primary EHR workflow to search up-to-date on a separate web browser or app. However, the company's current strategy involves a really pivotal shift. They are moving from being just a standalone web resource to deeply integrating their vast content into the clinical workflow via AI-powered partners like Wellsheet, who we mentioned earlier. This strategic partnership allows their invaluable knowledge base to be surfaced contextually, precisely when and where it's needed within the EHR. For example, if a clinician is reviewing a patient with a specific, maybe rare condition, the relevant up-to-date article might automatically appear as a suggested resource right within their EHR screen, rather than requiring a separate manual search.
Wow, that's a fundamental change in how their incredibly valuable content is delivered, isn't it? It transforms it from being like a static reference library into an active, intelligent participant in the decision-making process itself.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to put it. And then we have IBM Watson Health, which was, an early pioneer in using cognitive computing to support clinical decisions. Watson analyzes vast, diverse data sets, including extensive medical literature, clinical trial data, and even real-world patient outcomes to provide evidence-based treatment options. They've had a notable focus on complex areas like oncology, for instance, suggesting highly personalized chemotherapy regimens or novel drug therapies for cancer patients based on the absolute latest research in their specific genetic profiles. So this raises an important question, right? It's no longer just about having the knowledge, but how that knowledge gets into the hands of the clinician at the exact right moment in a truly actionable format. That's where these deep partnerships between content providers and AI integration specialists become so incredibly critical. It's all about proactive, context-aware delivery, not just passive availability anymore.
That makes perfect sense. It really is the
Yes.
difference between, say, having an entire encyclopedia on your bookshelf versus having a genius whispering the precise answer you need at the exact moment you need it, based on everything else you're observing in front of you. So, okay, how do these systems actually work under the hood?
Right.
What are the core technologies driving this intelligent guidance and allowing AI to move so far beyond simple rules? Let's dive into the engine room, so to speak.
Right. The shift from simple if-then ruled is absolutely central to the power of modern AI-driven CDSS. It's what makes them truly intelligent. These systems leverage a sophisticated suite of technologies that allow them to process incredibly diverse data types, like we said, from structured lab values to unstructured clinical narratives, and then deliver intelligent, highly personalized recommendations. It represents a monumental leap in both complexity and capability compared to those first-generation systems.
Okay, so what's the core engine here? What allows for that predictive analytics and pattern recognition we talked about earlier, the ability to actually learn from data?
That would primarily be machine learning, or ML. ML is the absolute engine of modern CDSS. It's what enables those predictive analytics and the sophisticated pattern recognition necessary to make sense of vast and complex data sets. Now, within ML, you have different approaches. For example, supervised learning models, things like decision trees, support vector machines, SVMs, or logistic regression. They're trained on labeled historical data. This means they learn from past patient characteristics and their known outcomes. They're effectively being shown millions of examples of this patient had these symptoms in this diagnosis, or this treatment led to this specific outcome.
So it's like it's learning from a massive historical library of patient cases that have already been categorized and documented by humans.
Exactly. And once they're thoroughly trained on that historical data, these models can then predict future events. For instance, they can estimate the likelihood of an asthma exacerbation for a given patient based on their past history, maybe environmental factors, and medication adherence records. Or they could predict the risk of an adverse drug event when a new medication is prescribed, taking into account complex polypharmacy, when patients are on many drugs at once. Then, moving to even more complex data types, you have deep learning, which is a subset of ML. Deep learning utilizes more intricate neural networks, such as convolutional neural networks, or CNNs. These are primarily employed when the CDSS needs to interpret non-traditional data types, things like medical images, X-rays, MRIs, maybe even dermatological images for skin cancer detection, or highly complex genomic sequences, especially when these data points are linked within the EHR. Deep learning allows the system to extract meaningful, often very subtle features from these highly complex, unstructured data formats that might be completely imperceptible to the human eye.
That's truly incredible, being able to effectively see and understand patterns in images or decipher genetic code. But you mentioned something else critical earlier about unlocking all that rich information hidden in doctors' free text notes. That sounds like a monumental challenge, right, given the variability of human language and medical shorthand.
And that's precisely where natural language processing, or NLP, becomes absolutely critical for AI CDSS. It's a huge piece of the puzzle. You're right. A vast amount of the most valuable clinical information in an EHR isn't neatly organized in drop-down menus or checkboxes. It's locked away within unstructured free text. Think about a physician's detailed progress notes, a specialist consultation reports, or a patient's discharge summaries. These are rich narrative accounts of a patient's journey and clinical status, full of crucial context. NLP enables the system to essentially read and comprehend this human language, even with all its medical jargon, abbreviations, typos, and nuances like negation. Understanding the difference between patient has chest pain and patient denies chest pain is obviously critical. It can then extract structured, meaningful data points from that text like specific symptoms mentioned, the severity of those symptoms, the onset date of a condition, or crucial social determinants of health that might impact treatment plans, things like housing instability or access to healthy food, which might be mentioned in passing in a note.
Okay, so it's taking all that narrative, all that written context that was previously kind of locked away, and effectively turning it into quantifiable data points that the machine can then analyze and learn from. That's powerful.
Precisely. This extracted structured data can then be fed directly into the ML models, allowing them to generate far more accurate and nuanced recommendations because they're working with a much more complete and contextual understanding of the patient's story. For example, NLP can reliably identify that a patient denies chest pain, which is crucial information, rather than simply missing that critical negative finding if it's only buried in text. It truly makes sense of the narrative of a patient's care, allowing the AI to connect subtle details and implications that might otherwise be missed by a busy clinician trying to quickly sift through pages and pages of notes.
That's a huge shift from just analyzing the structured data like lab results or diagnosis codes.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the back-end analysis, is it? You also mentioned improvements in how clinicians actually interact with these systems, making them more user-friendly, less burdensome.
Indeed. That's another key innovation in AI-driven CDSS. The use of AI not just for the deep back-end analysis we've been discussing, but also to fundamentally redesign and optimize the user experience for clinicians. It's about making the interaction intuitive, efficient, and less cognitively demanding. The Wellsheet example we discussed earlier illustrates this perfectly. They use AI to intelligently curate and display only the most clinically relevant information for a specific patient at a specific time, essentially predicting what a clinician needs to see based on the context of their current task or the patient's condition.
Right. So instead of a clinician having to click through, I don't know, dozens of tabs or scroll endlessly through a patient's entire medical history just to find that one key lab result or a particular specialist note from 6 months ago, the AI highlights it and presents it proactively.
That's the core benefit, yes. This drastically reduces the cognitive burden on clinicians, who would otherwise spend a significant portion of their already limited time just hunting for critical data within what are often notoriously cluttered and, frankly, unwieldy EHR interfaces. It saves precious time and mental energy, allowing them to focus more on direct patient care and complex decision-making. And beyond just displaying information more intelligently, companies like Contrast offer AI workflows that are designed to automate and streamline entire clinical processes. For example, automating the multiple steps involved in discharging a patient from the hospital, generating discharge summaries, reconciling medications, arranging follow-up appointments, sending prescriptions, all guided by AI to ensure no crucial steps are missed.
That really streamlines the whole process, and I can see how that would address a major driver of clinician burnout. Okay, but now for what sounds like something almost straight out of science fiction. Ambient scribes. This seems like the very cutting edge of data capture. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is truly pushing the boundaries of how clinical data is gathered in real time, and it directly feeds the very systems that then provide support. Ambient clinical intelligence, often referred to as ambient scribes, is an emerging technology that leverages AI to passively listen to the natural conversation between a patient and a clinician during an encounter. Think of it not just as a highly sophisticated transcriptionist, but one that possesses a deep understanding of medical context and terminology.
So hang on. While the doctor and patient are just having a natural conversation like they normally would, the AI is doing all the documentation and even the medical coding in the background without the clinician having to type or click anything directly during the visit.
Precisely. That's the goal. Tools from vendors like AvumMD and Corti, among others, are developing this capability. They can automatically generate highly structured, coded clinical notes directly from this conversation. And crucially, this isn't merely speech-to-text transcription. It involves understanding the clinical meaning, identifying key entities like diagnoses, symptoms, medications, procedures, inferring relationships between them, and categorizing that information appropriately for the EHR using standard codes like ICD-10 or SNOMED-CT. This capability creates an incredibly powerful real-time data capture mechanism that feeds structured, accurate data directly into the CDSS engine almost instantaneously. It promises to significantly reduce the massive manual documentation burden on clinicians, allowing them to maintain eye contact, focus entirely on the patient, and engage in more humanistic, less screen-focused care. It's a direct, continuous feed of rich, structured data into the very systems that then provide decision support.
Wow, that's an incredible integration. It seems like it tackles that fundamental data input problem head on, which feels like such a foundational challenge for these AI systems to work effectively in the first place. Okay, now that we've seen the technologies at play, let's look at the real-world application side. Who are the primary clients for these AI-powered CDSS? And what do the business models look like for actually getting these solutions into hospitals and clinics?
Right, the market side. The primary market for AI CDSS solutions largely consists of healthcare provider organizations. While clinicians are the ultimate end users, the main customers are typically hospitals and large health systems. These larger entities generally have the necessary scale, the complex patient populations, and, frankly, the financial resources to invest in these advanced technologies. They're often driven by a need for improved efficiency, better patient safety scores, and adherence to quality metrics, which are increasingly tied to reimbursement. However, it's important to note that ambulatory practices, so think outpatient clinics and specialized centers, and also digital health providers, are definitely a significant and rapidly growing client segment as these solutions become perhaps more refined, maybe more affordable, and more adaptable beyond just the big hospital inpatient settings.
Okay, and how are these solutions being sold and distributed? What are the common business models that govern how these powerful tools actually reach the clinicians who use them?
We generally observe a few dominant business models emerging in this space. The integrated EHR offering remains the most prevalent, especially from the big players. In this model, the CDSS functionality is either a core built-in component of the EHR platform itself, or it's sold as a licensed add-on module by the major EHR vendors like Epic and Oracle Cerner. It's essentially part of the comprehensive EHR package they offer, providing a sort of unified, albeit sometimes closed, ecosystem. Then there's the EHR overlay integration model. This is the primary approach for most of the AI native companies we discussed earlier, like Wellsheet, IfOmD, and Evidence Care. They typically sell their solutions directly to hospitals and health systems, usually on a subscription basis per user, per month, perhaps per facility. And their key promise, their main selling point, is seamless integration into the facility's existing EHR system, whether it's Epic, Cerner, or another platform. Their value proposition really hinges on enhancing what's already there, filling critical gaps in functionality or usability, and improving the user experience of existing, often quite cumbersome, EHRs without requiring a complete disruptive system overhaul.
Got it. So there are like highly specialized, powerful apps that run on the main operating system of the EHR, designed specifically to make it smarter and more functional for the user. And what about those knowledge providers, like UpToDate? How do they fit into the business model now, given their shift from standalone reference to integrated knowledge delivery?
Yeah, their model is evolving too. For knowledge providers like Wolters Kluwer, their core model historically has been content and knowledge licensing. They license their vast repositories of curated, evidence-based medical content to hospitals, health systems, and individual clinicians, often through site licenses. However, their business model is certainly evolving dramatically, as you noted. As we discussed, it now increasingly includes these strategic partnerships with AI integration specialists. This allows them to deliver their invaluable content much more effectively and contextually right within the actual EHR workflow, rather than simply being a separate searchable database that the user has to actively go to. It's about transforming their content into an active, intelligent component of clinical decision-making, delivered exactly when and where it's needed within the natural flow of patient care.
That's a really crucial evolution, isn't it? It's not just about having the information anymore, but about getting it where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, and in the right format. This brings us nicely to a critical analysis of the transformative impact. You mentioned earlier the shift from knowledge access to workflow integration. Can you elaborate on what that truly means for a clinician's daily practice and their decision-making process?
Yeah, this is perhaps the most profound transformation happening here. If you think about traditional CDSS tools, like, say, the original web-based version of UpToDate, they functioned much like highly advanced digital libraries. They contained invaluable information, no doubt. But to access it, a clinician had to consciously disengage from their primary workflow. They'd have to open a separate application or browser window, perform a search, perhaps read an article or guideline, and then try to synthesize that information and manually reintegrate it back into their patient encounter or their EHR documentation. The value in that old paradigm was almost entirely in the content itself, and it required active effort from the clinician to retrieve and apply it.
So while undeniably useful, it still required an active conscious effort to sort of step away from the patient or the immediate EHR task to go find something specific. It definitely interrupted the flow of work.
Precisely. It broke the workflow. The new generation of AI CDSS, however, is built on an entirely different principle: context and seamless integration. The AI's primary function is to understand the precise clinical situation within the EHR, the patient's current symptoms, their medical history, recent lab results, active problems list, and then proactively deliver the exact piece of knowledge needed at the exact moment of decision making. It's designed to be a seamless, almost invisible integration that minimizes or eliminates those interruptions. For instance, consider a clinician reviewing a patient's chart who presents with a specific constellation of symptoms and maybe a new abnormal lab result. The AI CDSS, without any prompt from the clinician, could potentially automatically surface a direct link to the most relevant up-to-date article discussing that specific lab abnormality in the context of those particular symptoms, all without the clinician ever having to leave the EHR screen. Furthermore, systems from companies like AvaMD and Evidence Care are specifically dedicated to taking static, often lengthy medical guidelines, which can be a real nightmare to navigate during a time-pressured patient encounter, and transforming them into interactive, intelligent pathways embedded directly in the clinical workflow. These pathways can guide the clinician step by step through complex diagnostic criteria, treatment algorithms, or even ensure appropriate billing codes are considered.
So the competitive advantage now isn't just about owning the best research or the biggest library of medical content anymore, but it's really about having the smartest AI to deliver that content contextually and proactively right when it's needed.
Absolutely, that's the shift. The competitive advantage in this new era is no longer solely about owning the best medical content. It's increasingly about having the most sophisticated AI to deliver that content seamlessly, contextually, and in a way that truly augments clinician cognition and workflow.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about making knowledge ambient, essentially, available without active effort right where you need it, effectively creating a kind of cognitive co-pilot for the clinician. It's a proactive push of relevant information based on context, not just a reactive pull initiated by the user.
That makes the clinician's job potentially so much more efficient, freeing up precious cognitive space for, higher order thinking and actual patient interaction.
Mhm.
And you also hinted earlier at a powerful symbiotic relationship forming between these ambient scribes we talked about and the CDSS itself.
Hmm.
Can you unpack that synergy for us? How do these two innovative technologies kind of feed off each other?
Yeah, this is a truly synergistic development, and it addresses a fundamental challenge that's always plagued decision support. A major limitation of any decision support tool, AI-based or otherwise, has always been its dependence on high-quality, complete, and structured input data. The reality is that EHRs, despite being digital, are notoriously messy, as we've discussed. Critical details, the subtle nuances of a patient's story, are often buried deep within unstructured free text notes, or sometimes they might not even be captured at all due to time constraints or the burden of documentation. This unstructured, often incomplete data is difficult for AI to process effectively in its raw form. This is where ambient scribes provide a potentially revolutionary solution.
Okay, so the CDSS needs good, clean, structured data to work its magic. But the primary source of that data, the EHR, is often fragmented, messy, and incomplete.
Exactly. That's the core problem. But AI-powered ambient scribe tools, like those being developed by Cordy, Nuance, now Microsoft, AvaMD, and others, address this directly. They can listen to a patient-clinician conversation and automatically generate accurate, highly structured, and appropriately coded clinical documentation in real time or near real time. This process effectively solves the data input problem for the CDSS by converting spoken dialogue into a rich, machine-readable format almost instantly. This creates a virtuous, real-time feedback loop. The ambient scribe captures more complete and accurate data during the actual patient encounter, minimizing missed details or transcription errors. This newly structured real-time data is then immediately available for the CDSS engine to analyze. This, in turn, allows the CDSS to provide significantly more relevant, more personalized, and more timely decision support for that very same encounter or for subsequent steps in the patient's care journey.
Wow. So the scribe isn't just a separate documentation tool operating in isolation. It's actively feeding the analytical brain of the CDSS with richer, real-time information, almost making the clinical encounter itself a live data input session for the AI.
Precisely. That's the potential synergy. This suggests that ambient scribes and CDSS are not really two separate, distinct tools, but rather they're becoming two synergistic halves of a single evolving system for intelligent clinical practice. The data captured accurately and comprehensively by the scribe directly enhances the capabilities of the CDSS, which in turn offers better, more contextualized support for patient care. It seems likely that companies that can offer both capabilities, seamless, real-time, comprehensive data capture and sophisticated contextual decision support, all within a single integrated package, will undoubtedly hold a significant competitive advantage in the future. They'd be creating a truly holistic and potentially self-improving system for healthcare delivery.
That paints a really powerful vision for the future of healthcare delivery. Okay, so let's try to tie this all together now. What are the key benefits we can realistically expect from the widespread adoption of AI-powered CDSS? And then, maybe more soberly, what are the significant hurdles or challenges that still need to be overcome before this vision is fully realized?
Okay. On the benefits side, the potential for transformation is truly enormous. Firstly, and perhaps most importantly, we foresee significant improvement in diagnostic and treatment accuracy by synthesizing incredibly complex patient data, including those subtle patterns in labs, imaging, genomic markers, and even unstructured notes, and comparing it against the latest evidence-based guidelines. AI CDSS helps clinicians make far more informed decisions. This should reduce the risk of diagnostic errors, especially in complex or rare cases, and truly optimize treatment plans, ultimately leading to better patient outcomes.
So it's almost like having an expert consultant constantly reviewing every single piece of information for every single patient, spotting things a human might understandably miss in the course of a busy day.
Indeed, that's a good analogy. Secondly, we're already seeing and expect to see more enhanced efficiency and a crucial reduction in clinician burnout. By automating documentation through technologies like ambient scribes, intelligently surfacing information exactly when and where it's needed, and streamlining complex workflows, these tools significantly reduce the administrative and cognitive load on clinicians. This immense burden is a well-documented key driver of burnout in the medical profession, and AI offers a tangible, scalable path to alleviating it, allowing clinicians hopefully to reclaim time for direct patient interaction, empathy, and higher-level problem solving. Thirdly, AI enables personalized medicine at scale. Traditional guidelines are often necessarily broad, designed for the average patient. AI-powered CDSS can move beyond these generic recommendations, providing advice precisely tailored to an individual patient's unique profile. This could include their specific genomic data, comprehensive medical history, unique combination of lab results, and even their social circumstances or preferences. This moves us much closer to truly individualized precision care for every single patient.
That's huge. And finally, what about the impact on just adhering to best practices and overall safety? Does it help there?
Absolutely. Fourthly, these systems can dramatically increase adherence to established best practices and enhance patient safety. They serve as a real-time quality check, proactively prompting clinicians with guideline-based recommendations and immediate context-aware alerts for potential issues, things like dangerous drug interactions, allergies, or even missed preventative care opportunities like vaccinations or screenings. This directly improves the overall safety, consistency, and quality of care delivered across the board, helping to reduce preventable adverse events and ensuring care aligns with the latest evidence.
Okay, those benefits are incredibly compelling, potentially revolutionary for healthcare delivery as we know it. But as with any powerful new technology, there are always significant challenges and barriers that need to be addressed. What are the critical hurdles facing AI-powered CDSS today?
Right, it's not all smooth sailing. The first, and perhaps the most fundamental practical challenge, is EHR integration. We keep coming back to this, but it's crucial. The success or failure of almost any CDSS tool is almost entirely dependent on its ability to integrate seamlessly, reliably, and intuitively into the clinician's primary workflow, which, as we've established, is the EHR. This is absolutely not a trivial technical task. It involves navigating complex legacy systems, dealing with diverse and often incompatible data standards between different vendors or even different versions, overcoming limitations of existing APIs, application programming interfaces, significant implementation costs for the health system, and a substantial time investment for training and workflow redesign. Clunky, poorly designed, or incomplete integrations inevitably lead to low adoption rates and immense user frustration, completely undermining all the potential benefits the AI promises. If it's hard to use, clinicians just won't use it.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Doesn't matter how smart the AI is under the hood, if it's difficult to access or if it doesn't fit effortlessly into the clinician's existing daily system and rhythm. What else stands in the way of widespread effective adoption?
Well, another major hurdle is real-world validation and, critically, gaining trust. While many AI CDSS algorithms show immense promise in research settings and controlled academic environments, there's still, frankly, a scarcity of robust, independent studies documenting their actual effectiveness in diverse, messy, real-world primary care and specialty environments over the long term. Proving their tangible value, that they consistently lead to measurably better patient outcomes, greater efficiency, or lower costs, and crucially, gaining the deep trust of the frontline clinicians who will be relying on these tools every day remains a significant challenge. Clinicians, quite rightly, need to see consistent, proven, and transparent results to trust a system that directly impacts patient lives. This trust is often undermined by a perception of AI as a black box, where the reasoning behind a specific recommendation isn't clear or explainable to the user. They need to understand why the AI is suggesting something.
Right, the black box problem. And then there's the age-old problem of data itself, especially in healthcare, which can be notoriously messy and potentially biased, right?
Yes, indeed. That's a huge one. The maxim of garbage in, garbage out is absolutely paramount here. A CDSS's recommendations are only as reliable and, importantly, as equitable as the underlying EHR data it's trained on and analyzing in real time. This data can unfortunately be incomplete, inaccurate, or critically reflect existing systemic biases baked into historical care patterns. For example, if the historical data used to train an AI model disproportionately represents certain demographic groups, or if past care has implicitly or explicitly led to disparate treatment recommendations or outcomes for different patient populations based on race, gender, or socioeconomic status, the AI could inadvertently learn, embed, or even amplify those existing inequities or flaws within its recommendations. This is a crucial ethical and technical challenge, ensuring data quality, completeness, and diversity, and actively working to detect and mitigate bias in algorithms. It requires careful data curation, the development of bias detection techniques, and continuous monitoring of AI performance across diverse patient cohorts to ensure fairness.
That's a profound challenge, and one that really needs to be addressed head-on to ensure these powerful tools benefit everyone equitably and don't worsen existing disparities. So, thinking about all this, what does it all mean for the clinician on the ground, the doctor or nurse, navigating these new tools and this evolving landscape? It sounds like an exciting, but also incredibly complex future to navigate. As we start to wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear that artificial intelligence is fundamentally reshaping clinical decision support. We're witnessing what feels like a monumental shift from those static reference tools of the past to truly dynamic, context-aware cognitive aids integrated directly into the everyday healthcare workflow. It's a transformation that promises to revolutionize how medical knowledge is accessed, applied, and maybe even continually refined, ultimately striving to make healthcare smarter, safer, and hopefully far more efficient for everyone involved.
And as AI becomes an increasingly powerful and integrated cognitive aid, constantly analyzing these vast streams of patient data and offering nuanced guidance, it really does raise a profound question for the future of clinical practice itself. How will the dynamic between invaluable human intuition, empathy, and clinical judgment on the one hand, and this AI-driven precision and predictive analytics on the other, truly evolve? What new competencies and skills will clinicians need to master in this rapidly augmenting future? How will the roles shift when they have essentially a digital co-pilot always by their side, analyzing and suggesting? It's a fascinating question about the human-AI collaboration in medicine.
That's certainly something worth mulling over. What is the optimal balance between incredible technological advancement and that irreplaceable human judgment and connection in the future of medicine? We encourage you, our listeners, to reflect on the implications of this monumental shift, not just for patients and the quality of care they receive, but for healthcare providers everywhere and the very nature of clinical practice itself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.